Good morning. It is the 16th of July, 2018. My name is Derek. This is the Money Charts channel, and this is the crypto day morning. All bets, all trades, and such of the like. Well, that's your own risk, own reward. 15-minute time frame, roughly around somewhere around 4 o'clock, but mainly closer to 5. This thing had to move from 341 up to 380 on the ONT. Not much data here to go with within the daily term time frame, but it's making a move to the 18 average of lows from this leg lower. After all, we had this leg originally down at the June 24th handle. When it broke that level of support, came down. Now it's having a small rally at this stage. Other coins, the Binance coin, it started getting going around 1 o'clock in the morning, going from $12 and change up with over a full dollar to $13 and change. And that's about 10% in just the short term move to the upside. And on its daily chart, it's having a test within the declining 18 average of highs. So this is a nice big situation. Not that it has to beat the resistance test and not go down, but in order to make that higher low and make sure that the 18 average can at least flatten out. Bitcoin Cash getting out and having a great gain as well, with a move breaking up past around 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. On its daily, it's making a move, breaking past above the 18 average and breaking past this level here. Whether you want to call this a double bottom, I mean, it's not really an inverted hinge or a cup and handle rather, but after having this level, you resist here, so be it, great. But to make a higher low, because it really didn't even really pierce down much below the 18 as it stayed sideways. So thus, it's showing that this move that happened at the end of June, started July, albeit a very small gain, well, with a very small sell-off, I guess you would say, has held up, but it's still got to get above this neckline for me to be convinced that this thing is bearing and ready to get going. Cardano or ADA pretty much shares the exact same pattern with all the stuff stated here. You can see the neckline on this case is about 16.2 cents. And this thing has been getting going. It's been in a nice up run for quite some time, making nice patterns of higher highs and higher lows since late the 12th of the month, or 4 days ago. But it's went from about 12.2 cents up to about 15.2. So a gain of 3. That works out to about 25% from the July 12 lows. Next up in Tron, and we can pretty much see the inverted head and shoulders pattern breakout here, with the left shoulder being the left part of the chart, roughly around the 11th of July. Then the head at around the 12th of the next day. This little congestion area in here, it was that of the right shoulder. If we put a neckline in the exact but more so general area, the exact line would pretty much be here. And some would say that the range would be from here up to about this point, regardless of how you look at such of the case. When the price action came into here, that means it was testing its previous area, but what it did do there that it didn't do last time was stay and congest within that certain area. And it did so, and it was done congesting at about 5 o'clock in the morning. It goes from 34 cents up to 37. That's just it's a quick 10% move. But from the low down here, you're talking about 31 cents to 37. And that's more close to a 20% move. And on the daily time frame, it's having a test of the 18 average of highs. So therefore, as I stated earlier, it's going to be very important for it to hold and stay above 3.378 cents on any decent pullbacks that happen to appear. And if it gets above it, this thing can end up going straight up continuously still to about 4.2 cents. And thus it would be doing, although you can't see much data, you can see it was coming from a downtrend, bands flattening out. It would be establishing a level of resistance if something like that were to take place. With an EOS, I place this line here. You can almost take the same sort of inverted head and shoulders pattern, however you want to look at it, but the The support was found at the key level when it managed to break this level at around 5 o'clock. It went from about 737 up to about 790. That's about 7-8% just from that low. And then from this low going from like 660 up over well over $1.20 or well over 20% amongst that run. But it just continues to still correct close to the 18 average of highs. And the next one is that of Stellar. And it's not Stellar just on how amazing it is, it's the actual name. As it had a monstrous move on the 13th, multiple days ago, going from 18.2 cents up to 20.7, holding that and continuously supporting the 18 average on the single hour time frame for quite well. 5 o'clock in the morning, however, this thing broke out from 22 cents up to about 23.5, so about a 7% move. On the daily term time frame, again, not much data, but enough to realize that within this downtrend, this thing made pretty much the compilation of a double bottom formation, which is basically two U's, two V shapes. And when we see a pattern, or when I see a pattern of something like this in here, well, what I need to see on a second move like such is for this general area of resistance to be that of support and thus match up within the 18. If there's no resistance now, and that's completely fine, giving somebody multiple options, I guess you would think of it as, I would expect breaking here to have a decent leg, and this is where I do miss not having extra data, but, and I can get it for what it's worth, if it does break this level, I wouldn't be surprised if it has a decent size leg higher, and then I would adjust where I need to see this hold. Instead of holding down towards here, it would rather be closer to the previous high level. But regardless of the fact, all the markets are exploding up to the or going to the upside very nicely. Now let's take a look at the big three, with starting with moving next to Ethereum. And on its single hour time frame, starting at about 5 o'clock, it broke past this short-term level of resistance from about 452 up to about 475. So that's a difference of about 23 points, or about 5%. And it had, of course, this key level of resistance in here at about 445. That became support amongst its last correctionary test. On the daily term time frame for such, it's pretty much got the double bottom formation if you can get above the neckline here at 491. But when you have a pattern and a bear market of making lower highs and lower lows, that means you make a low which broke a level of support. The lower high is probably going to correct within the 18 somewhere. Okay, so lower, and then you have the lower one, that's for sure. Correcting the 18, lower one, correcting the 18, higher one, now it's breaking the 18. So this is where the change off, sellers didn't aggressively come in, and or buyers, and with the volume not showing, it's not and or it's sellers not coming in really. And then or sellers not coming in and buyers just being not as enthusiastic, or not needing to wait for cheaper prices. Thus, when you see the situation where consistently, okay, this has been resistance, and you can see some sort of action where it becomes the opposite, and you can see it becoming that of support, which is what happens in a bull market. It supports this 18, bear market, it resists it. Is it done resisting? Well, time will tell. However, it's got nice looking setup so far. Litecoin on the single hour time frame, and the big volume coming in to associate with it. 5 o'clock in the morning starting as well. $78 at a third. Now it's very close to 83. So that's a differential of almost $5. So well over 5-6% of a move on its daily term time frame. You can say the exact same thing about Ethereum, consistently making lower lows and resisting somewhere within the 18, but the last one, when it broke down to 73.5 after it had a low before of 72 and change. So $0.50 higher, it found support, thus getting above this 87, 88. You can start to fill some of this gap space, and When you consider where the May highs were at 180, and it's still more than half off since that point, you can get the wild moves like it's nothing. And last year, the price action goes from like $4 up to $400 almost. So we'll say a 75x gain. But when you have a 75x gain and you can correct such, and you see the price action starting to get above these levels in here, well, what kind of potential gains do you have breaking resistance? And the answer is, wow, pretty decently high, because crypto space has major volatility for the upside and downside. So if you look at personal portfolios, oh, I've just lost half my portfolio, or I've lost 60% of it. Okay, so be it. That's just a retracement. Hold in there, hodl in there, as some might state. And you can see that, later on, that you're 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 times higher than what your portfolio was at previous times, because of the amazing rides that this roller coaster game offers. And of course, the term roller coaster, it's not technically, but in hindsight, it kind of is. Bitcoin, starting at 5 o'clock, broke out at about 6,300 and change, 6,380, making it up to about 6,660. So a gain of about 280 points, or about 4%. It's going to have the lowest moves. All the other ones having 5, 6, 7, or 7, 8, 9, 10% moves. This one under 5. Okay. Daily term time frame. Well, we talked about the inverted head and shoulders pattern yesterday. It's making a move closer towards such. But after the sell-off that occurred, it made the higher low. That's the big thing. You have a point low to a point high. When you go to a new low, as long as it's higher than this and you start to rally the upside, I am not surprised to see that it could break the level of support, resistance, and thus maybe make support here. But if you just look at it from a mathematical level, if it's got the capabilities for a one-leg move to go from 57 3/4 up to 68.20, that's a gain of like 20%. So to do 20% from here would be like 7,400. So an equivalently same move would make a leg higher, just because of the fact that you're starting from a higher basis points. And that's why higher highs and higher lows, after it's made the higher low, it's not as difficult as it sounds to make higher, keep the pattern on an individual basis. Of course, to do it 10, 20 times over like parlay, that's why markets go up, markets go down. They're going to have decent up and down moves, and you see it all the time. Like 6,000 up to 10,000, back down to 6,000. And of course, when it's ready to go for big gains, it doesn't. I mean, a shitty gain would be like, 7,800 when it's all said and done, 8,000, because that would make a lower high. And its mathematical numbers from this point here would happen to be that of about 10%. And an interesting gain is getting back up to 10,000. That's pretty much 5,000 or 50%. And the reason why I consider that interesting, because it's still got a lot of work just to revert any of the negativity / neutrality that has persisted itself into the Bitcoin chart this year. And by doing such and getting above it, that's what's going to be fueled or needed for the 18 average to start sustaining a bull market. And I think all of the big momentum you would see within mainstream media and all over the web sphere about cryptocurrencies would go to major proportions, or at least start doing such, around the 13,000, 14,000 area. And when it breaks resistance and ends up like 40,000, 50,000 type ballparks, you're going to hear a lot of talk about Bitcoin amongst the, I call it the real world community, but crypto space, all that. But you're going to see a lot more people interested in Bitcoin. And one of the big things is, or you'll hear people say, if your barber is into whatever, or your hairdresser, or any of those types of businesses, the cab driver. And this has been, people have been saying this for 20, 30, 100 years in this nature for movements of funds like stocks and so forth. But when everybody's getting into it and talking about it, that's usually your big red flag, or at least the yellow flag to sell. But what I like about that analogy for all those types of businesses, if you really are big into cryptocurrencies and your hairdresser is willingly able to accept it, the cab driver in which you took the cab to get your haircut willingly accept Bitcoin, and then you went to the farmer's market to buy some watermelons and some peaches and some oranges and some all these other beautiful fruits, and they accept the Bitcoin as well. And this is a relatively new phenomenon. Well, then that might be that yellow flag. But if they're talking about it and they ain't taking it, or they're really trying to understand how that thing really works, well, what it's not is the situation where everybody's getting into it and now it's time to get out. But what it is the early adoption phase moving into its mass phase at the early levels. Let's finish this video off with one alternate coin, and it's not that popular of one, but it's got a nice little setup. It's called Pay, or 10x. And on its single hour time frame against Bitcoin, earlier last night at 7 p.m. Eastern time, price action was 11.5. Well, now it's 16.7. That's a difference of like 52 points. And 56 or 57 is a 50% gain. So that's a pretty darn near decent gain. When we look at this on the daily term time frame, you get the wild moves. Again, I talk about the buy low, sell high strategy. Lots of great selling opportunities here. Lots of great buying opportunities. Selling opportunities. Buyback opportunities, and the selling opportunities are presenting itself again, throwing that part aside, and the great volatility. You make this level, you make a statement of this huge bear market rally, and I say that in that form because they can be very difficult to trust, but you know what, we'll see how it goes, because correctionary phase, it held and stayed above that area. Now, technically, it spent the majority of its time below the 18 average of lows. Like, we have a whole bunch of people that calculate the front-weighted 18 lows, and it becomes that big of a deal to that exact number sense. But how it stayed within that area, that's good enough for support within. Thus, I have point low, I have point high, I have situation correction. Correction is defined by the holding on the 18, and a new leg higher is leaving the 18, getting above, significantly above resistance, and then its correctionary move will be when the not newly rising 18, but the 18 average that is rised in price higher because the move did. Thus, oftentimes you like to see these areas come to key areas like this level of resistance before. If it can hold where I drew those circles, well, that's finding support at an area of resistance. So it's always ideal. Maybe it comes down, finds support here. Maybe it'll find resistance somewhere else, and that would be how I'd be looking for it. However, the whole point of me showing this is not that, oh, I love this coin, it's so great. Yes, I own it, but I also own a few dozen other coins as well. A handful of other dozens. And therefore, it's okay, it's like another one, but it has the moves. And when I'm ready to sell, and of course lately it has been the case, then that's what you do. When it comes down to it, from the highs in 2017 around Christmas, this thing was at 38,000. So it has still lost more than half of its value from that point. And those highs from this one here, this is when it got to 135,000. It lost like 3/4 or so of its value. So it's been in a big long-term trend down against Bitcoin, but you have those big up and down movements. It's had two in the past. All the markets went up together in the month of December into January. This one was no exception. It went from 10,000 up to, well, about 40, but firmly into the 30s. 3 to 4x move. The rally last summer from the July lows at 25,000 up to 165. Well, that's better than a 6x move. So far from these lows, going from 7,500 to 17,000, about a or 2.5x move. Yeah, that number is much smaller compared to the other ones. Meaning, if this thing can get going from here, the potential of how this far can go, how far this can go and how fast, well, it can go pretty far and it can do it pretty fast, because I've mentioned so many times markets go down, especially on the Bitcoin cross, a lot slower than they go up. So here's a spot where June 16th through June 27th, it goes, or actually I should be using it from here. June 21st, because that's where the highs here are, down to here, which is like 5 to 6 weeks, 5 weeks and change. It goes down. It gets it all back in like 3-4 days. Okay. And then from this high here, which is June the 30th, to this low, that's like July the 11th. So that's like 12 days. And, well, obviously it's taken less time than that to bring those moves back. So then we look at the situation of, okay, the amount that it lost from December 24th or Christmas of last year to this low at the end of June was a half a year. So how long does it take to get 6 months worth of losses back? It should do it in less than 2 months given the trend. And that's just markets going down a lot slower than they're going up. Thank you for tuning in to this morning's Crypto Day Morning, and have yourself a great day. Bye-bye.